Today I'm going to make the 3 sub-assemblies for the Automoblocks parts that we're going to be using for Activity 7.4. I've already downloaded all of the parts that were located in Canvas under the Resources tab. Those can be found in the File section. Again, if you go up to the Resources tab here, and then unfortunately these files aren't downloading as a file, but if I go here to the T9 Automoblocks part file, in the Unit 7 student folder, you can see there's the subfolders right here. It's the T9 Automoblocks, or you can see it right here as well. Click on that for the T9 Automoblocks, and there's all of the parts. If I hit Control A, that selects all 13 of the parts, and then I could download that as a zip file. Once that is done downloading, you can open that up, and you might see something different in here one way or the other. You're going to go Open. And you'll see this in a zip folder, which means I have to unpack this in order to use it. So I want to go to Extract All. You may have to hit Extract here first before you see this Extract All button. Once I press on that, it's going to open up this view here, which says Select a Destination folder. So in order for me to extract these, I have to tell it where to. And right now they're in my Download folder, and that's not where I want to use this. So I'm going to go to my document setting, to Documents, and then over to Inventor. Double click on Inventor, and then I would recommend building a folder that's titled 7.4, which you can see I've already done. Once I select that folder, I hit Select Folder and then Extract. Now I'm not going to do that in this video because I've already extracted these files and I don't want to waste time with that. So at the end of that, you should have all of the different parts that we need for each of the sub-assemblies. So now I'm in Autodesk and I want to build a new assembly. So I'm going to start with Assembly. The other way to do that would be I could use the New button up here, or I could use the File New button here and then go to Assembly. Either way, however you get here, you'll end up on this page. So this assembly feature allows you to take multiple parts and place them together so that they can interact with each other. And that's exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to start by placing my base. And in this case here, that's usually your biggest part. And these Automoblocks parts, they're going to be the wood portion of the Automoblocks vehicles. So I'm going to take the T9 bed, because that's the subassembly 1. I'm going to open that up. And it almost always seems to open up really huge in my view here. Now, if you take a look at this, this isn't exactly the optimum angle. In fact, if I left click to place this, you can see that that's where my Automoblocks vehicle seems to go vertical for some reason. That's not really how you want to present this thing. So I'm going to rotate this about the x-axis by hitting the right click button and then hitting rotate 90 degrees. Unfortunately, that rotated the wrong direction, so I'm upside down now, so I'm just going to have to do that 2 more times. And then you can see now the orientation of that truck bed is where I want it. So if I left click again, it's in place. All right, I already have 2 on there. I certainly don't need a third, so I'm going to right click and hit OK. That stops placing new parts down. And it's really easy to get rid of a part. I just left click and then I hit the delete button. I could also right click and press delete, and that gets rid of it. All right, so here is my truck bed. The first thing I want to do is lock this truck bed down because I don't want it moving around. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to click on grounded right there. Once that truck is grounded, it can't move anymore. You'll see the little pin symbol on my display panel there. Shows that truck is pinned down. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the parts for it. And the Canvas page, if we go back to that, it should show you this activity. If you go to this page in here, and your view might look a little different than mine, you'll see the 3 different sub-assemblies just listed out and the parts that they have in there. What they don't show in this subassembly here is the tires and the wheels, which I need to add also. And that's because those really are parts that we can add in later, but I think it's easier to just add them as part of the subassemblies. So I'm going to go ahead and add the tires and wheels to subassembly 1 and to subassembly 2. Don't need to do that to 3 because there's no wheels associated with this view here. This is subassembly 3. So we're going to start with the truck bed, the 1 block socket, which is this piece, a connector, 2 axles, 2 tires, and 2 wheels. So place, same place where I found my truck bed, I'm going to find my T9 axle. Left click on that and open it. And if you zoom in real quick, you can see where my axle, the way it's lined up. The part with the little slit on it is the part that sticks out. And so the other side is what goes into the Automoblocks base. So if I have this one oriented for this side just right, so I'm going to left click. I'm going to move over to this side because this is where the second one's going to go. And it's always easier to place these things in the proper orientation. You don't have to. Once you start doing your constraints, it'll snap into position. But I'm going to go ahead and right click here, and I'm going to rotate it about the y-axis twice. So once, twice, and then left click to place it, and I'm going to hit OK. Now you see how this part is what goes into the Automoblocks vehicle with these ribs on it. And this part with the crack here, the little slit, is where the wheel slips over the top here, and this allows this to give a little bit so that the wheel can snap on over the top. Okay, speaking of the wheel, that should be the next part I'm going to add. Add the T9 wheel, open. And just like that first one, this one is aligned properly, but I'm going to have to rotate this one around the y-axis twice before placing it with a left click. Right click and hit OK. And I need 2 tires. So T9 tire, open. These I don't have to rotate because they are symmetrical, and it doesn't matter which side goes in towards the vehicle. I need the socket. And this one calls for a 1 block, so this is a 2 block. I need a 1 block socket. And I need a connector, which is there. All right, so I have all of the parts that I need. So now I'm going to start my assembly. There's a lot of different ways to assemble this thing, and no one is perfect. This one seems to be very efficient, however, so I'm going to go ahead and stick with it. I'm going to start with a mate constraint. So that's my mate, and I know these are between the mate and flush. I want to mate, and I'm going to mate. What I'm going to do is grab one of these rings on the inside here so that I see that access line. Once I've got that access line, I'm going to go ahead and left click, and I'm going to do the same thing with this hole here. I'm going to click on this ring till I get an access line, and I'm going to mate those axes up. Apply. Now I need to pull this axle, out a bit, and so I'm going to cancel this just so it doesn't confuse the computer a bit, so I can pull it out. You'll see I can still move this thing in and out, but I can't go side to side. It'll only go in and out, and that's fine. That's kind of that's exactly the constraint I wanted to place on it. The next I'm going to do is another mate constraint. This time I'm going to mate the body of the truck bed with the face here of this axle. And what I like to call the donut, you see the 2 rings in there. If I catch just one ring, that means I'm on this outer edge. And I don't want to be on the outer edge of the ring. I want to be on this flat surface right here, that part. So I can tell that I'm in there by seeing 2 concentric rings. That lets me know that I'm actually in the middle where I want to be. So I'm going to left click. And that mated that up. Perfect. So make sure you hit apply. And again, I'm going to adjust some parts around, so I'm going to hit cancel. So there is my first axle. It's firmly in place, and it's exactly where I want it to be, just the right depth. Everything's perfect. So next I'm going to do is I'm going to insert this wheel onto the axle. So I'm going to go with constraint. This time I'm going to use an insert constraint. and I'm going to use the aligned version. So I'm going to zoom in just a bit to show you what you need here. I want this outer ring so I can see the axis, and I want this outer ring of the axle. And I want to mate that with this outer ring of this inner portion here, right there. And when I do that, that should set it up just right. Now I want to show you, if you mate these and for some reason this wheel is backwards, this tire is backwards, check to make sure you haven't done the opposed view. If you click oppose, this is what it ends up looking like, and it can be very frustrating trying to figure out why this isn't working right. Make sure you're in the aligned constraint like that, and then hit apply. All right, I don't need to turn this off because I'm just going to use the same constraint again. I'm going to use the insert aligned, and this time I'm going to add the tire to the wheel. So I'm going to click on the inner ring of the wheel, the closest one to the body. And then this, again, this tire portion is bidirectional. It doesn't matter if I click on this ring here on the inside or this one on the other side over here. It really doesn't matter. So I'm just going to do this one because I can see it. I'm going to mate that, and you can see where, I'm sorry, I'm going to insert that using the insert constraint. So that is flush. I'm going to apply, and I am done with that constraint. So you can see where I've got this tire, it looks just about perfect. If I rotate this wheel, the tire, however, you'll notice that the wheel doesn't rotate. Same thing if I grab the wheel, the tire doesn't rotate. It looks like I got spinners on this thing. So what I want to do is put another constraint in that mates these two together so that they'll rotate in conjunction. And this is something similar to what we did when we used our Automata simulator and we mated up the different work planes using the cams. So in this case here, I'm going to take a wheel constraint here. I'm going to look at this is wheel 2. So if you look over here in the browser and you left click on the arrow next to wheel 2, you can see first of all those are the two inserts that I did earlier. Those are those constraints. But these up here are different work planes that exist, and then this origin, every part will have an origin folder there with all of the original X, Y, YZ planes in there. I'm going to use this XZ plane here and mate it with the tire's XZ plane. So I'm going to find tire 2, origin tab, and you can see that XZ plane there. Now I don't have to make these visible in order to mate them. In fact, I'm not going to because I don't like messing with them. I can see them just fine here in my browser, and that's how I can find them. So I'm going to use just a regular mate constraint. I'm going to click on the XZ, and I'm going to come up to the wheel and click on its XZ. You can see my mouse there in the browser, and it got that click that I wanted. Apply. Now you'll note when I move one, because those two planes are in line with each other, it's forcing both of them to move together in unison. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to go through it really quickly because I just explained it all and there's nothing different on it. All right, so I'll just go through, I'll talk it through, but I'm going to do it pretty quickly. All right, so first I'm going to do a mate constraint, and I'm going to catch this axis with the axis of this hole here. Apply that. I'm going to drag this out, do another mate constraint, this time between the bed and the donut inside here. Again, don't fall for that one. I don't want that because that's the top. I want this one right here, this flat side that's not perpendicular to this. I can double check to make sure I got that right. And it looks perfect. Okay, now I'm going to mate this tire to it. So I'm going to do constraint, insert. Remember to hit aligned. Grab this edge here on the top. Mate that with this outer edge here. And look, that's perfect. Apply. Let's add the tire. Again, the side closest to the truck bed. Outer edge of the tire, either side, doesn't matter. Apply that. Cancel. Okay, so I've got both tires on there. you know what I didn't do is I didn't mate up these axes here, so I still have the spinner problem. So let's fix that. All right, so I'm going to close my wheel 2s because I don't want to do those. I don't want to confuse them and mate my wheel 1 with my wheel 2 or with my tire 2. Okay, so again, in regular mate constraint, we're going to do XZ, XZ, apply, and now these are in unison. Perfect. Okay, now I can go home. So the next thing I need to do is mate this one block socket, and this can be a little tricky if you look at it, because most people want to go right into and mating this on the back, this little part right here with the back end of this this other part here, the socket. But those two really don't mate together properly, because if you look at a real Automoblocks vehicle, and feel free to ask me to borrow one if you want to see what it looks like. This part here in front is actually flush. This surface right here should be flush with this. And that can't happen if I mate this back end. It's going to be recessed too far into the base. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the flush constraint on this front part. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and mate. See this lip here, it's a little bit bigger. Again, I don't want to mate this flat surface with one of these surfaces because otherwise I'm going to have to offset it. Instead, what I want to do is catch this really, really thin part, and it's made to fit snugly right on this edge here. So let's do a mate constraint. Zoom in so I can see. You know you got it right when you see the little rectangle here. I'm going to mate that. Since that's the top, I'm going to mate it with the top of this. To do that, I have to rotate this a little bit. I'm going to mate it right there. And I'm going to have to move this around a bit, so I'm going to hit OK. And even though these guys are mated, I can still move them around a bit. So now I'm going to do another mate constraint. This time with this little rectangle. Again, I want to make sure I see that rectangle shape. And then I'm going to go and catch this side. I want to catch the flat bit here, not on the curves, but right on this flat part. And apply that. So now I've got this constrained top and bottom, so my only degree of motion is this way in and out. And I can settle that hash by going a flush constraint this time. This is flush. Remember, this is mate. This is the flush constraint. And I'm going to make it flush with this and this part right here. Make these guys flush with each other. Apply that. And I have a complete assembly for assembly 2, or assembly 1. I can go ahead and add in this connector if you want. And I'm going to go ahead and do that because that's kind of tricky how to do this connector. So this connector is made to go flush for this part right here to mate with the receiver side over here. If you look at the back side of it, here's your receiver end. That's made to go in there. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead, with this part right here. So I can go ahead and mate that. All right, we're going to do a regular mate constraint with this surface. With its partner right here. Those are made to go together. Apply that and cancel out. Now, here's the thing, right? I still can move this thing around in a lot of different degrees of freedom. What I want to do is I'm going to use that same trick I used on the tires and wheels. I'm going to use the two work planes here to align this with its socket. So I'm going to close up the other parts on my browser. I'm going to open up the one block socket connector in the origins and the connector of the one block socket. So now I've got access to those work tabs. And if you look here, you can see where this XZ and this XZ, those are in the same alignment. So this is going to work out good. So I'm going to hit constrain, mate constraint, XZ to XZ, apply, and I'm going to do the YZ to YZ. Well, before I do that, let me show you what happens now. I can move this thing side to side, but I cannot move it up and down. It's locked into that plane. And if I lock it into this other plane going this way, that'll keep it from moving side to side as well. And that'll lock it in just where we want it. So YZ to YZ, apply, and now you can see where that's locked in. I can't move any of my parts other than the tires, which is really all I want to move. So File, don't forget to save your work, save as, and this is Subassembly. Oh, look, I've made a few of these before. 1, enter. Okay, that is Subassembly 1. All right, I'm gonna stop this now and I'll start a second video for Subassembly 2. That'll be much more abbreviated